green hunting cap squeezed the top of the fleshy balloon of a head, the green ear flaps full of large ears and uncut hair, and the fine bristles that grew in the ears themselves stuck out on either side like turn signals, indicating two directions at once. Full pursed lips protruded beneath the bushy black mustache, and at the corners sank into little folds filled with disapproval and potato chip crumbs. In the shadow, under the green visor of the cap, Ignatius J. Riley's supercilious blue and yellow eyes looked down upon the other people waiting under the clock at the D.H. Holmes department store, studying the crowd of people for signs of bad taste in dress. Several of the outfits, Ignatius noticed, were new enough and expensive enough to be properly considered offenses against taste and decency. Possession of anything new or expensive only reflected a person's lack of theology and geometry. It could even cast doubts upon one's soul. Ignatius himself was dressed comfortably and sensibly. The hunting cap prevented head colds. The voluminous tweed trousers were durable and permitted unusually free locomotion. The pleats and nooks contained pockets of warm, stale air that soothed Ignatius. The plaid flannel shirt made a jacket unnecessary, while the muffler guarded exposed Riley skin between ear flap and collar. The outfit was acceptable by any theological and geometrical standards, however obtruse, and suggested a rich inner life. Shifting from one hip to the other in his lumbering, elephantine fashion, Ignatius sent waves of flesh rippling beneath the tweed and flannel, waves that broke upon buttons and seams. Thus rearranged, he contemplated the long while that he had been waiting for his mother. Principally, he considered the discomfort he was beginning to feel. It seemed as if his whole being was ready to burst from his swollen suede desert boots, and as if to verify this, Ignatius turned his singular eyes toward his feet. The feet did indeed look swollen. He was prepared to offer the sight of those bulging boots to his mother as evidence of her thoughtlessness. Looking up, he saw the sun beginning to descend over the Mississippi at the foot of Canal Street. The Holmes clock said almost 5. Already he was polishing a few carefully worded accusations designed to reduce his mother to repentance or, at least, confusion. He had often had to keep her in place. She had driven him downstairs. She had driven him downtown in the old Plymouth, and while she was at the doctor's seeing about her arthritis, Ignatius had bought some sheet music at Werlein's for his trumpet and a new string for his lute. When he had wandered into the penny arcade on Royal Street to see whether any new games had been installed, he had been disappointed to find the miniature mechanical baseball game gone. Perhaps it was only being repaired. The last time he had played it, the batter would not work, and after some argument, the management had returned his nickel, even though the penny arcade people had been base enough to suggest that Ignatius had himself broken the baseball machine by kicking it. Concentrating upon the fate of the miniature baseball machine, Ignatius detached his being from the physical reality of Canal Street and the people around him, and therefore did not notice the two eyes that were hungrily watching him from behind one of D.H. Holmes's pillars, two sad eyes shining with hope and desire. Was it possible to repair the machine in New Orleans? Probably so. However, it might have to be sent to some place like Milwaukee or Chicago or some other city whose name Ignatius associated with efficient repair shops and permanently smoking factories. Ignatius hoped that the baseball game was being carefully handled in shipment, that none of its little players was being chipped or maimed by brutal railroad employees determined to ruin the railroad forever with damage claims from shippers, railroad employees who would subsequently go on strike and destroy the Illinois Central. As Ignatius was considering the delight which the little baseball game afforded humanity, two sad and covetous eyes moved toward him through the crowd like torpedoes zeroing in on a great woolly tanker. The policeman plucked at Ignatius's bag of sheet music. "You got any identification, mister?" the policeman asked in a voice that hoped Ignatius was officially unidentified. "What?" Ignatius looked down upon the badge and the blue cap. "Who are you?" "Let me see your driver's license." "I don't drive. Will you kindly go away? I am waiting for my mother." "What's this hanging out your bag?" "What do you think it is, stupid? It's a string for my lute." "What's that?" The policeman drew back a little. "Are you local?" "Is it part of the police department to harass me when the city is a flagrant vice capital of the civilized world?" Ignatius said over the crowd in front of the store. This city is famous for its gamblers, prostitutes, exhibitionists, antichrists, alcoholics, sodomites, drug addicts, fetishists, onanists, pornographers, frauds, jades, litterbugs, and lesbians, all of you whom are only too well protected by graft. If you have a moment, I shall endeavor to discuss the crime problem with you, but don't make the mistake of bothering me. The policeman grabbed Ignatius by the arm and was struck on his cap with the sheet music. The dangling lute string whipped him on the ear. "Hey," the policeman said. "Take that," Ignatius cried, noticing that a circle of interested shoppers was beginning to form. Inside D.H. Holmes, Mrs. Riley was in the bakery department, pressing her maternal breast against a glass case of macaroons. With one of her fingers, chafed from many years of scrubbing her son's mammoth yellow drawers, she tapped on the glass case to attract the saleslady. "Oh, Miss Inez," Mrs. Riley called in that accent that occurs south of New Jersey, only New Orleans, but Hoboken, near the Gulf of Mexico. "Over here, babe." "Hey, how are you making?" Miss Inez asked. "How you feeling, darling?" "Not so hot," Mrs. Riley answered truthfully. "Ain't that a shame?" Miss Inez leaned over the glass case and forgot about her cakes. "I don't feel so hot myself. It's my feet. Lord, I wished I was that lucky. I got arthritis in my elbow." "Oh, no," Miss Inez said with genuine sympathy. "My poor old papa's got that. We make him go set himself in a hot tub full of boiling water. My boy's floating around in our tub all day long. I can hardly get in my own bathroom no more." "I thought he was married, precious." "Ignatius? Sweetheart, you gonna give me 2 dozen of them fancy mix?" "But I thought you told me he was married," Miss Inez said while she was putting the cakes in a box. "He ain't even got him a prospect. The little girl friend he had flew the coop." "Well, he's got time." "I guess so. Look, you want to give me half a dozen wine cakes too? Ignatius gets nasty if we run out of cake." "Your boy likes his cake, huh?" "Oh, Lord, my elbow's killing me." In the center of the crowd that had formed before the department store, the hunting cap, the green radius of the people, was bobbing about violently. "I shall contact the mayor," Ignatius was shouting. "Let the boy alone," a voice said from the crowd. "Go get the strippers on Bourbon Street," an old man added. "He's a good boy. He's waiting for his mom." "Thank you," said Ignatius haughtily. "I hope that all of you will bear witness to this outrage." "You come with me," the policeman said to Ignatius with waning self-confidence. The crowd was turning into something of a mob, and there was no traffic patrolman in sight. "We're going to the precinct." "A good boy can't even wait for his mama," by D.H. Holmes. It was the old man again. "I'm telling you, the city was never like this. It's the communists." "Are you calling me a communist?" the policeman asked the old man while he tried to avoid the lashing of the lute string. "I'll take you in too. You better watch out who you call a communist." "You can't arrest me," the old man said. "I'm a member of the Golden Age Club, sponsored by the New Orleans Recreation Department." "Let that old man alone, you dirty cop," a woman screamed. "You're probably somebody, grandpa." "I am," the old man said. "I got 6 grandchildren all studying with the sisters. Smart, too." Over the heads of the people, Ignatius saw his mother walking slowly out of the lobby of the department store, carrying the bakery products as if they were boxes of cement. "Mother," he cried, "not a moment too soon. I've been seized." Pushing through the people, Mrs. Riley said, "Ignatius, what's going on here? What you done now? Hey, take your hands off my boy." "I'm not touching him, lady," the policeman said. "Is this here your son?" Mrs. Riley snatched the whizzing lute string from Ignatius. "Of course I'm her child," Ignatius said. "Can't you see her affection for me?" "She loves her boy," the old man said. "What are you trying to do to my poor child?" Mrs. Riley asked the policeman. Ignatius patted his mother's hennaed hair with one of his huge paws. "You got plenty of business picking on poor children with all the kind people they got running in this town, waiting for his mom, and they try to arrest him." "This is clearly a case for the Civil Liberties Union," Ignatius observed, squeezing his mother's drooping shoulder with the paw. "We must contact Myrna Minkoff, my lost love. She knows about those things." "It's the communists," the old man interrupted. "How old is he?" the policeman asked Mrs. Riley. "I am 30, Ignatius said condescendingly. "You got a job?" "Ignatius has to help me at home," Mrs. Riley said. Her initial courage was failing a little, and she began to twist the lute string with the cord on the cake boxes. "I got terrible arthritis." "I dust a bit," Ignatius told the policeman. "In addition, I am at the moment writing a lengthy indictment against our century. When my brain begins to reel from my literary labors, I make an occasional cheese dip. Ignatius makes delicious cheese dips, Mrs. Riley said. That's very nice of him, the old man said. Most boys are out running around all the time. Why don't you shut up? The policeman said to the old man. Ignatius, Mrs. Riley asked in a trembling voice, what you done, boy? Actually, Mother, I believe that it was he who started everything. Ignatius pointed to the old man with his bag of sheet music. I was simply standing about waiting for you, praying that the news from the doctor would be encouraging. Get that old man out of here, Mrs. Riley said to the policeman. He's making trouble. It's a shame they got people like him walking the streets. The police are all communists, the old man said. Didn't I say for you to shut up? The policeman said angrily. I fall on my knees every night and thank my God we got protection, Mrs. Riley told the crowd. We'd all be dead without the police. We'd all be laying in our beds with our throats cut open from ear to ear. That's the truth, girl, some woman answered from the crowd. Say a rosary for the police force. Mrs. Riley was now addressing her remarks to the crowd. Ignatius caressed her shoulders wildly, whispering encouragement. Would you say a rosary for a communist? No, several voices answered fervently. Someone pushed the old man. It's true, lady, the old man cried. He tried to arrest your boy, just like in Russia. They're all communists. Come on, the policeman said to the old man. He grabbed him roughly by the back of the coat. Oh, my God, Ignatius said, watching the wan little policeman trying to control the old man. Now my nerves are totally frayed. Help, the old man appealed to the crowd. It's a takeover. It's a violation of the Constitution. He's crazy, Ignatius, Mrs. Riley said. We better get out of here, baby. She turned to the crowd. Run, folks. He might kill us all. Personally, I think maybe he's the communist. You don't have to overdo it, Mother, Ignatius said as they pushed through the dispersing crowd and started walking rapidly down Canal Street. He looked back and saw the old man and the bantam policeman grappling beneath the department store clock. Will you please slow down a bit? I think I'm having a heart murmur. Oh, shut up. How do you think I feel? I shouldn't have to be running like this at my age. The heart is important at any age, I'm afraid. There's nothing wrong with your heart. There will be if we don't go a little slower. The tweed trousers billowed around Ignatius's gargantuan rump as he rolled forward. Do you have my lute string? Mrs. Riley pulled him around the corner into Bourbon Street, and they started walking into the French Quarter. How come that policeman was after you, boy? I shall never know, but he will probably be coming after us in a few moments as soon as he has subdued that aged fascist. You think so? Mrs. Riley asked nervously. I would imagine so. He seemed determined to arrest me. He must have some sort of quota or something. I seriously doubt that he will permit me to elude him so easily. Wouldn't that be awful? It'd be all over the papers, Ignatius. That disgrace. You must have done something while you were waiting for me, Ignatius. I know you, boy. If anyone was ever minding his business, it was I, Ignatius breathed. Please, we must stop. I think I'm going to have a hemorrhage. Okay. Mrs. Riley looked at her son's reddening face and realized that he could very happily collapse at her feet just to prove his point. He had done it before. The last time she had forced him to accompany her to Mass on Sunday, he had collapsed twice on the way to the church and had collapsed once again during the sermon about sloth, reeling out of the pew and creating an embarrassing disturbance. Let's go in here and sit down. She pushed him through the door of the Night of Joy bar with one of the cake boxes. In the darkness that smelled of bourbon and cigarette butts, they climbed onto two stools. While Mrs. Riley arranged her cake boxes on the bar, Ignatius spread his expansive nostrils and said, My God, Mother, it smells awful. My stomach is beginning to churn. You want to go back on the street? You want that policeman to take you in? Ignatius did not answer. He was sniffing loudly and making faces. A bartender, who had been observing the two, asked quizzically from the shadows, Yes? I shall have a coffee, Ignatius said grandly. Chicory coffee with boiled milk. Only instant, the bartender said. I can't possibly drink that, Ignatius told his mother. It's an abomination. We'll get a beer, Ignatius. It won't kill you. I may bloat. I'll take a Dixie 45, Mrs. Riley said to the bartender. And the gentleman, the bartender asked in a rich, assumed voice, what is his pleasure? Give him a Dixie, too. I may not drink it, Ignatius said as the bartender went off to open the beers. We can't sit in here for free, Ignatius. I don't see why not. We're the only customers. They should be glad to have us. They got strippers in here at night, huh? Mrs. Riley nudged her son. I would imagine so, Ignatius said coldly. He looked quite pained. We might have stopped somewhere else. I suspect the police will raid this place momentarily anyway. He snorted loudly and cleared his throat. Thank God my mustache filters out some of the stench. My olfactories are already beginning to send out distress signals. After what seemed like a long time, which there was much tinkling of glass and closing of coolers somewhere in the shadows, the bartender appeared again and set the beers before them, pretending to knock Ignatius's beer into his lap. The Rileys were getting the night of Joy's worst service, the treatment given to unwanted customers. You don't by any chance have a cold Dr. Nutt, do you? Ignatius asked. No. My son loves Dr. Nutt, Mrs. Riley explained. I gotta buy it by the case. Sometimes he sits himself down and drinks 2-3 Dr. Nutts at one time. I'm sure that this man is not particularly interested, Ignatius said. Like to take that cap off? The bartender asked. No, I would not, Ignatius thundered. There's a chill in here. Suit yourself, the bartender said, and drifted off into the shadows at the under end of the bar. Really? Calm down, his mother said. Ignatius raised the ear flap on the side next to his mother. Well, I will lift this so that you won't have to strain your voice. What did the doctor tell you about your elbow, or whatever it is? It's got to be massaged. I hope you don't want me to do that. You know how I feel about touching other people. He told me to stay out of the cold as much as possible. If I could drive, I would be able to help you more, I imagine. That's okay, honey. Actually, even riding in a car affects me enough. Of course, the worst thing is riding on top of one of those Greyhound scenic cruisers so high up. Do you remember the time I went to Baton Rouge in one of those? I vomited several times. The driver had to stop the bus somewhere in the swamps to let me get off and walk around for a little while. The other passengers were rather angry. They must have had stomachs of iron to ride in that awful machine. Leaving New Orleans also frightened me considerably. Outside of the city limits is the heart of darkness. The true wasteland begins. I remember that, Ignatius, Mrs. Riley said absently, drinking her beer in gulps. You was really sick when you got back home. I felt better then. The worst moment was my arrival in Baton Rouge. I realized that I had a round-trip ticket and would have to return on the bus. Yeah, you told me that, babe. The taxi back to New Orleans cost me $40, but at least I wasn't violently ill during the taxi ride, although I felt myself beginning to gag several times. I made the driver go very slowly, which was unfortunate for him. The state police stopped him twice for being below the minimum highway speed limit. On the third time that they stopped him, they took away his chauffeur's license. You see, they had been watching us on the radar all along. Mrs. Riley's attention wavered between her son and the beer. She had been listening to the story for 3 years. Of course, Ignatius continued, mistaking his mother's rapt look for interest. That was the only time I have ever been out of New Orleans in my life. I think perhaps it was the lack of a center of orientation that might have upset me. Speeding along in that bus was like hurtling into the abyss. By the time we had left the swamps and I'd reached those rolling hills near Baton Rouge, I was getting afraid that some rural rednecks might toss bombs at the bus. They love to attack vehicles, which are symbols of progress, I guess. Well, I'm glad you didn't take the job, Mrs. Riley said automatically, taking guess as her cue. I couldn't possibly take the job. When I saw the chairman of the medieval culture department, my hands began breaking out in small white bumps. He was a totally soulless man. Then he made a comment about my not wearing a tie and made some smirky remark about the lumberjacket. I was appalled that so meaningless a person would dare such effrontery. That lumberjacket was one of the few creature comforts to which I've ever really been attached. And if I ever find the lunatic who stole it, I shall report him to the proper authorities.